Looping through reality with Benadryl. Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to today's report. Today's report was sent in by Beta. When this happened, the summer of 2014. The drugs used were diphenhydramine, alcohol, caffeine, and cannabis. At a dose of an estimated 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams of diphenhydramine, the route administration orally, gender, male, weight, 230 pounds, age, 15, height, 6'2", prior experience includes various substance use, but mostly alcohol and cannabis. The set, he notes, I have ADHD and bipolar 2, been on Ritalin since I was 5, haven't been able to get back on it, and I really need it as it helps me immensely. And the setting, at his friend's house, outside briefly, and then at home. So here to kick off Deliriant Week, we have Beta first trying diphenhydramine. He experiences many reality-bending effects as he spends the night with a few of his friends. This is a really strong dose, so it did leave him to unable to interact properly. And from the combination with the other substances, it probably just made the experience that much more strong physically and mentally. It's a pretty detailed report and a good look in at Beta's experience. I'm sure everyone's going to like this one, so without further ado, let's dive right into this. This happened when I was a sophomore. It was me, my best friend Will, and our 21-year-old friend, Mike, who would always get us beer. My dad was very lax about drinking, and weed always. Dad would get me beer whenever. Stepmom didn't care about drinking, didn't like weed, but never did anything against it, or really know until I was a junior. I was way into weed since 8th grade, been drinking mainly beer from age 8 till the 6th grade. Then I'd sneak into my stepmom's room. I've heard somewhere taking Benadryl would increase the effects of beer. I wish I knew what Benadryl was at the time, and I also think it's important I had an experience like this. I'll go more into my drug use in my deck summary another time. It was the summer of 2014, in between freshman and sophomore year. I was 15, 230 pounds, 6'2". I hit 6 feet by 6th grade, very painful, and was always looking to get fucked up. Me and Will had met in 7th grade and had been best friends ever since. I met Mike through Will at his girlfriend's house. By the time of this experience, Mike's father had died from his meth use and a brain tumor. Mike was living with his uncle close to my house at the time. Me and Will were playing COD Black Ops 2 and drinking a few beers before noon on mostly an empty stomach when Mike came over. We decided to walk to his house. We smoked weed and chilled a bit. This is when I took 475 milligrams of DPH. I was completely arrogant of what DPH was and its effects. I took 125 more milligrams 20 minutes later. We were smoking weed and I keep dropping the bowl and my lighter. I dropped the lighter on the bed, and the bed sheet became blue, and was swirling, rolling, and swallowing my lighter. I had much trouble trying to find it. Then the bed sheet became water, and I completely lost my lighter for a time. It really just slid off to the floor. I was splashing it, seeing, hearing, and feeling the water. Plus I could see depth of the water, and saw a fish swim by. I was excited, and told my friends, but I guess they thought I was stoned and stupid. I went to take a piss and had notable trouble, but chalked it up to my extreme anxiety of pissing in a new place. 15 minutes later, I remember compulsively redosing small. I snorted my Ritalin a lot from 6th grade, slowed down a lot when I discovered weed, and was getting it a lot in freshman year. I think this had something to do with it. I had that feeling at the time while I still had logical thought. Or maybe it was the delirium. I'd somewhat mindlessly take 37 milligram doses, breaking some in half, and God knows what else, 'cause my motor skills were fucked. I knew it, but it seemed logical. I knew the exact milligram dosage of each piece, even though that's not how breaking pills works. I was doing this in a hallway. I bought 2 50 milligram pill boxes of DPH. I opened them all and put them in a plastic baggie the day before. I stopped redosing when I realized I had no more monster to swallow the pills with. I remember at one point, I was looking at a Benadryl I was breaking, and my vision went out of my body and zoomed up on the Benadryl, like a camera zooming in way close. The pill took up most of my view, and the background was a blur, and I can see the bottom of my fingertip holding the pill. Intricate carvings began emerging, and 5 small rectangle chunks emerged. The space where the rectangles were taken out was black, and the carvings emitted faint blue light. After 5 or 15 minutes of me looking at this pill, I hallucinated a mannequin with a short white female wig behind me. I spun around and thought I was in someone's attic, but I remembered I was at Mike's uncle's. But I saw open doors with rooms appearing on the walls, with mannequins appearing in there, popping in, out, and around me, while the hallway stretched to an impossible length to my left. I managed to get back to the room with my friends, and here's where my memory gets fucky. I had drank 3 monsters that day, probably how I was able to stay awake. My friends could tell I was messed up. I told them Benadryl. They didn't know what it was. They asked me how much I had taken, and I couldn't remember. When they asked me that, I get the antihistamine overlay thing of them looking at me through my eyes. A door behind me opened, my eyes dilated, and I was bugging with an awkward, reassuring smile, but being all twitchy and tense. I'd had brief seconds of clarity throughout. I'd catch myself babbling nonsense and stop and see if my friends were really there or not. I was hallucinating them leaving and being there when they were not, and his uncle popping his head in the door, telling us to shut up and quiet down. I'd start getting angry and fed up when no one would be able to understand what I was saying to them, and with the thing with them always disappearing and not letting me know when they were really there, as if they could. I hallucinated smoking several cigs, as I had compulsively smoked my whole pack at some point. I put 2 cigs in the sink at some point too. I'd see the pack was empty when I realized the cig was fake and get mad at myself for forgetting it was empty. At one point, I threw the empty pack out of anger and hallucinated pulling the empty cig box out of my pocket too. I got angry, yelled, and burst out the room, suddenly complaining I had to piss, but couldn't. I was incredibly thirsty and uncomfortable. I began walking through the house with an angry and confused face, and eventually to the backyard. I was yelling angrily for Will and Mike to come back, and that it was funny they were ditching me. I walked back through the house to the front porch for a second to look for him. I get real sad, then walk back into the living room, where his uncle would ask what I'm doing. I came off sad and told him I was looking for Will and Mike, that they were hiding from me and it was upsetting. He gives me a confused reaction, and I get mad because he didn't know what I was talking about. Then things would loop and we'd do it again, or I would walk right into Mike's bedroom where they were at. They were behind me, and I had that antihistamine overlay of out-of-body camera angles of them seeing me do this with confused, scared looks on their faces. One view was super far away, and I could see the whole house and backyard. The edge of the front yard in the background was a blur, and it looked like there was a grayscale blur mountain behind his house with the sun hanging low. No one called the cops because we all had weed. Mike's uncle did meth, and the neighborhood was a bad one. At one point in my loop, I was in the backyard, and Will and Mike were at the edge of the yard leaving, yelling at me that they're tired of this, and that I've been doing it for an hour and a half, and that we were finally going to go get beer. I told my friends when I got there I wanted to get beer so I could drink it with the DPH. But they were busy smoking and playing PS3, so I started taking the pills in anticipation for the beer. They repeated it several times before I realized I was stuck on that part of the loop and that I was in a loop. I got real scared and joined them. It was simple to get to the gas station. Go right, then left, then straight to the end of the street. The whole time I was speaking nonsense and getting angry no one could understand me. We got 2 blocks to the main road with busy afternoon traffic. I saw the busy road and thought it was a beautiful flowing stream with blurs of blue and red lights. But on a deeper level, I knew it wasn't and was dangerous. From there, we stuck to the back road behind the buildings, and I yelled at one of the employees from a distance that he stole my cigs and was making me hallucinate my non-existent empty box. My vision was tunneled, my mouth was incredibly dry and cottony, and it hurt to breathe, and my bladder was full and hurt because I couldn't release it. We got to behind the gas station where me and Will waited for Mike to get the beer and a water for me. At some point while we were waiting, I said fuck it and pissed myself. Will was mad, but I was immensely released. Right before we were leaving, I felt it all kick in like slamming into a large stone wall. I'd say it was anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams of DPH. Mike came out with the beer and water, but I was too delirious to drink the water, so we started heading home. I didn't know this area that well, and I think that it's a miracle I made it back to his uncle's, because I could barely walk. I was tripping over my own feet, so I couldn't carry the case of Miller Lite glass bottles. My vision was so tunneled I could only see the street ahead of me and couldn't see my feet. I remember I felt so sluggish, heavy, and uncoordinated, and with the double vision, I could only see the street ahead of me. So it seemed logical for me to follow them from a block behind. I tried explaining, but they didn't understand me. At this point, I thought they left me, but I'm sure they were shepherding me back. I get real confused at the end of the streets about what I was doing, who I was, and where I was going. I'd stop for several minutes and realize my friends are yelling at me to go this way. When we got there, I was happy to finally get to drink my beer and trip off this combo, not even realizing what was happening. For a while, I was calm, got to my third beer, drank it, and tried to piss, but couldn't. I went back to the room, and I couldn't tell if Will or Mike was with me or not. It was like I was suddenly in a completely new dimension. I began taking more Benadryl, and I went on that loop from earlier. At one point, I was in Mike's bedroom when I hallucinated the room empty, and then Mike's uncle popping his head in, yelling at us to shut up again. Suddenly, Will and Mike were in the room with me, and I got up angrily and yelled at them, "Fine, I'm leaving." In between leaving the bedroom and passing Mike's uncle to leave, I had a brief second of clouded clarity, where he asked me nicely and was confused why I was leaving. Then I snapped back and said, "Because you want me to leave," and stormed out. I have no idea how I got home, and it's a miracle I got home safely at that. When I got to my room, I was hallucinating it was a different room, or I'd be back at Mike's, chatting with my friends. Then my stepmom, who was a nurse, asked me who I was talking to, as I had walked in my house and room alone. I'd tell her, then my friends would disappear. This must have happened a few times, because my dad popped in once, and I told him I took Benadryl. I had a baggie of them on my nightstand. I remember counting them throughout the day and being confused on why there was less in there than last time. I remember getting down to 45, 35, 25. I think I hallucinated taking more, and I fell asleep at some point. I remember it was still daylight outside, around maybe 5 p.m. All I remember is waking up, looking for my baggie of pills, and expecting it to be half full, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I suspect my parents took it, but I wonder why they would. I assumed I took them all and didn't trip, so I went back to sleep. I have no memory of the next 3 days. I wake up feeling the worst hangover ever. My body all twitchy, dry, itchy, and I remember it was the most uncomfortable shit ever. I was in agony for the next couple days and have no memory of what happened other than being a brain-dead zombie, not knowing what happened. At one point, I thought my life was always like this, and I wonder why it felt so good to drink energy drinks. But I slowly regained my clarity and cognition and realized how fucked up the events that just happened were, and that they were not a dream. I might have possibly had some sleep paralysis during this, but I don't remember. And that's pretty much it. I wrote this on 3 beers, 210 milligrams of DXM, 7 quercetin, THC, and a ginkgo biloba supplement. Been writing this for an hour, so I'll stop. But I very much hope I get in this writing mode again. I've been wanting to write this experience and the upcoming deck summary for a long time, but my bipolar depression and unmedicated ADHD make it hard. But this channel is an inspiration to me to want to write my drug experiences and share them with the people of the world, so we can build the collective knowledge of drug effects and the effects of DPH on human minds.